with you from thehealthyamerican.org. Well, here we go again. More fear mongering, and it's basically measles mongering. It's making the headlines specifically in South Carolina, also in Washington. And in this broadcast, we're going to be talking about vaccines and the diseases they target. Notice it doesn't say the diseases they cure. And I also want to share with you a question that came in from the Healthy American about how to get out of taking vaccines, leaving the country and going to another country. I want to share with you a card from a Healthy American thanking me for helping her stay away from becoming a human pincushion. And then I also want to share these books. In fact, let's just start with the books. And as I'm doing that, I'd like to ask you a question. Did you get the measles as a child? Did you get the mumps? Did you get the chicken pox? And I'm not even going to be calling these diseases. I'm going to be calling them conditions. And before we look at the books and these things that people have sent me, I need to confess that I pre-recorded a broadcast for you that I was going to air this evening. And it was a very detailed look into the state senator from South Carolina. Yes, a Republican state senator, Josh Kimbrell, who has been embroiled in different scandals, including diverting, how do you like that phrase? Diverting $2 million from a business that he owned with a business partner into his political campaign. He is a state senator. He's been a public serpent, as I coin it, since 2020. And then he's been running for the governor of South Carolina as well. And he is pushing hard to get rid of exemptions for measles vaccines because can't we all get along? Didn't you know it's your responsibility to put on a raincoat to keep someone else dry? Well, the reason this is a confession is because I did the video. I have a slideshow for you. It's actually a really good video. And I played his comments on Facebook, a live stream that he did, kind of backtracking to cover his tracks, I think is how you say it politely. And guess what? I didn't share my screen. So that's going to take some editing magic on my end. And of course, I don't have an editor. I do all my own research. I do all my own preparation for the videos. Olivia does help me kind of cobble together some of the Substacks based on my notes and so forth. But this one I had completely prepared and I didn't share my screen. So I'm going to need to edit that for you and I will play it for you on Wednesday, which means I'm totally live. I'm off the cuff and I want to tell you about what's coming next because what they want to do is a test drive. And by they, people are like, who's they, Peggy? And I'm not talking about pronouns. He, she, they. I'm talking about the powers that shouldn't be. What they are doing, the bad guys, the puppet masters, the controllers. I won't call them the elite because they're not better than you and I. They're not better than me is the correct grammar. And they want to roll out. And I don't know if this Josh Kimbrell, the state senator, is being paid or bankrolled by the big pharma, but he's definitely putting this test case out there saying, well, you know, the government really overstepped its bounds when it came to COVID, but that's mRNA. And yeah, we all know that, you know, not everybody wanted to do that. But when it comes to all of the vaccines that we know and love, you shouldn't be afraid of those. That's his message. Again, I'm going to do all of that for you in a deep, detailed coverage of broadcast for you on Wednesday. But basically, they are ramping up just like they did with COVID. And I don't want to inflict any PTSD on anyone, but that's exactly what they did. It was in January of 2020. I think it was even like no, December, maybe. I don't even watch the news, so I wasn't really up to date on any of that. But you couldn't help hearing kind of, you know, little COVID here, little COVID there. And then you started getting these like scoreboards of different counties where people were getting COVID. And I'm like, why do I even care about that? That's like somebody getting a broken leg. Like, does that affect me? If somebody's got a broken leg, do I have to wear crutches? If somebody can't use their legs anymore and they're in a wheelchair, do I have to go in a wheelchair? And maybe I should go on crutches just in case my leg is broken and I don't know it. That's what they were telling us about COVID. You might have it. It's so deadly. You don't even know that you have it. Then you have to be tested with a very invasive Schwab assault, as I call it, with all of the false positives, testing for something that doesn't even exist with a test that was never even approved, and it still never has been. You probably know that, right? There is no FDA, not that I care about the FDA, but even if we play by their rules, there is no FDA approved test for COVID. I don't know if you knew that. There is no FDA approved suffocation device for COVID. I don't know if you knew that, which means if you are participating in the test and in the suffocation devices, you're participating in a medical experiment and you have a right of no consent. And that's what we're going to be talking about. I want to share with you a website called Physicians for Informed Consent. And I want to share with you a couple of things that you have sent me. So I have got my pulse on the radar of this new operation that they're rolling out. And of course, they're doing it in South Carolina because it's Republican and it's conservative. And they had a Republican senator say that he wants to take away exemptions for measles because, come on, it's up to you to keep other people safe. After all, a teacher who was vaccinated against measles caught the measles, so we're told, from a student who wasn't vaccinated. So let me see if I got that straight. They want the unvaccinated student to get vaccinated with a vaccine that didn't protect the teacher that was vaccinated with the vaccine. Yeah, makes perfect sense to those who can't think critically. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to wear a raincoat to keep other people dry. And their raincoat doesn't work. Even if they're wearing one, it doesn't work unless you wear one. And it's up to you to wear a raincoat if somebody else can't wear one. So I've said it before and I'll say it again. Let me know if you're getting a headache, if you feel a headache coming on from all this hogwash, and I'll be glad to take an aspirin for you. No, isn't that how it works? I thought that's what we were told. So they're rolling that out again as a test drive. And you know what? It's going to flop. People are not falling for it. So you'll hear all of the comments that people were responding to Josh Kimbrell, and he had published a letter saying your personal rights and your parental rights really have to be balanced against public safety, is what he called it. Excuse me, public safety is like, don't run through red lights. That's public safety. There's no such thing as public health. It's your own personal health. And by the way, if you're afraid of getting sick, stay home. He wants the unvaccinated to stay home and learn online. Josh, you got it exactly backwards. There's another expression for that when you have something backwards. And yeah, you can drop a comment for me. It should be those who are afraid of going to school should be the ones that are staying home and learning online. That's how it should roll. And he says that those who are unvaccinated, it's just common sense that they shouldn't be able to play in sports and participate in regular school activities. Well, you know what, Josh? That's exactly backwards. It should be the ones who are afraid of getting a disease that they're vaccinated for. They're the ones that should not participate in the school activities and sports. So that will, as I say, we're going to listen to him on Wednesday. I'll make sure that I'm sharing the screen. And here's my little kitty cat. And I keep them clear and free from all of those things as well. So let's start with this. Let's start with this. I've got these books that came in from a Healthy American, and her name is Natalie Triumphs, and she has sent me books before. Now, I just got these, so I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but this one is called What If World War III Was a Lie? I think that's something very intriguing to dive into. And then this one, The Silent Death Fall, it has to do with Yosemite Park, and these are all novels, but this one I thought was also very interesting. And this is Taking Down the Deep State Summer Heat 2. And she talks a lot about current events and what was going on in the last few years of the hogwash. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm so grateful when y'all send me cards and letters and goodies. I really, really appreciate it. Now, speaking of cards and letters, this came in from a Healthy American, and she said, "Dear Peggy, speaking of becoming a human pincushion, do you know of any way to get out of taking the vaccines to leave the country. I'm planning on taking a trip abroad in January of 2027, she says, and I don't want to take the Hep B vaccine or any vaccine. Let me know, has anybody found themselves in that situation? And the research that I found, and Marie, if you're watching, I'll also reply because I send everybody who writes to me a handwritten thank you. And there's a snail mail address for you in the description box. And if you are on TV and you don't have a description box, you can send that to Peggy Hall, 205 Avenida Del Mar, Post Office Box 681, San Clemente, California, 92674. Well, Marie, here's the situation. When you are going to another country, you are under the other country's laws, which means you would have to seek your exemption or your waiver with that country. Now, it's probably a good idea if you got some type of medical exemption from a doctor in the United States that you could then use as part of your paperwork when you are appealing to the other country. And I would recommend that you go through the embassy or the consulate of that country that's in the United States. It is common with African countries, as I understand it, and possibly some other countries in South America or maybe even Eastern Europe, that you would have to get these vaccines as a condition of entry. It has nothing to do with the United States, and it has nothing to do with your rights as an American. So that's what I would recommend. And the other thing would be change your travel plans if that's something that's important to you. I personally am not going to put a trip over my own health. And the good news is that there's so much that you can see in books and videos and movies. I mean, in the old days, before YouTube, if you wanted to see like what the Greek Isles looked like, you could have a book. Maybe you could go to a presentation by someone who had been there and they'll show you their slideshow. But now it's basically, you can see these places through other people's eyes, like you're there in person. So those are just some suggestions that came right off the top of my head. So I hope that that's helpful for you. But the bottom line is that it's not up to the United States when it comes to other countries. It's up to other countries. I have a series of videos that I've done on this channel about the digital requirements in Europe, what countries are requiring, what the rollout is. And then, of course, we've talked at length here about the Real ID and how you can get out of that as well. Apparently, they're charging you an additional fee at airports if you're not using a Real ID. But people pushing back, and that's why they haven't been able to push that as fast as they wanted to in the United States. It was already delayed by a decade, believe it or not, that Real ID. And then more and more people are going to the DMV to turn it in. I told you my personal story, so you can just do a search for Real ID or digital ID or something like that. I've got several videos all about that. So the other thing I wanted to share with you, I'll share this letter at the end of the broadcast, but I wanted to share with you another thing that came in. And I mentioned this briefly a few videos ago, but this comes from physiciansforinformedconsent.org. And if you're trying to look for them, just type in Physicians for Informed Consent and their website will pop up. So I am a supporter of this organization, and they sent me a whole goodie bag, including this book, this hardcover book. And I recommend that you get this, especially for new parents, because now they're going to be faced with deciding what they're going to do with their children. And I know that there are some parents that are being told by their doctors that they should space out these shots, that they shouldn't get them all at once. And in fact, there's been a lot happening with Health and Human Services. I'll have to do a separate video on that, where recommendations are coming out, where the childhood vaccine schedule has been reduced. But as my friend and advocate for truth about autism and vaccines and the harms of these things, Laura Hayes, has said before, that's like saying, well, instead of beating up your child all at once, we're going to space out the beatings. And instead of getting beat up, 3 times on one day, you're just going to be beat up once a month. So it doesn't make sense. It still is. And I have to be careful and delicate on this channel, but you know that I've spoken about the harms of these products at great length. And so I get very emotional about it. I get snarky about it. And I know that that may not be always a good first video to share with your new parents or even grandparents or just anybody that's thinking about getting another flu shot or a shingle shot or something like that. So this book takes the emotion out of it. And on Wednesday, we're going to talk about measles in detail. And here, the healthy American that wrote to me, she was concerned about the hepatitis B vaccine. Look at this, all of this data about the Hep B vaccine. And it talks about there's statistical analyses, there's clinical trial information, there's all sorts of detail that a person who wants to learn more about can read without getting swept away in all of the emotions. And this information is also available. This is called the Silver Book, and I highly recommend that you purchase it if you're interested or give it to someone as a gift. And that's available at their website. This is not a sponsored video. I support the work that they do. And you can also get the information for free by going to the website and clicking through education, and every disease, I don't really like to call them diseases, but every condition will be described. And then most importantly, they talk about the risk of the vaccine. And is the risk of the vaccine more or less than the risk of this condition? So I was talking, and I will be talking about measles and other childhood conditions. And I'm calling them conditions because it may be in God's great wisdom that we are designed to go through these rites of passage, I guess I could use that expression, in order for our body to experience different mechanisms and stages. And there is a growing body of evidence that these conditions become protective down the line against different forms of cancer, against heart disease as an adult, and also having these childhood conditions and getting through them can also make it so that even on a lesser scale, you just don't have things like hay fever and hives and allergies and autoimmune. Now, probably that's because you didn't get the injectable products, if you know what I'm saying. You didn't become a human pincushion. As for myself, I had the mumps and I had the measles and I had the chicken pox. So I'm going to conclude that I was never vaccinated. I don't have any records to show that I was, and my parents are no longer alive, so I can't ask them. But in all of my, baby books and paperwork and things that I have from childhood, I do not have any vaccine records. So I can't conclude that I was, because I had those. And if I was vaccinated, well, I still got these conditions and I'm still thriving. So that's my own personal experience. And I was after the age, I don't think they were doing polio at that point. So there are graphs in here, and she'll show, for example, with measles, the death rate, the mortality rate from measles had already dropped incredibly since, I'm going to be sharing this with you again, but you can see this here. It dropped before the vaccine was even introduced. So if you like to read like I do, and you like to research, I highly recommend that you get this Silver Book. Now, just a couple little caveats, because I have my savvy, sophisticated, healthy Americans. And when you go on that website, you will notice that they are talking about contagious diseases and viruses and so forth. I am of the mind, as many of you, because I've learned and understand that viruses have never, to our understanding, have been isolated, have been proven to exist. This is called the theory of virology. Over the span of humanity, there have been different theories of disease. And you know what, friends, just between you and me, if I can get a little snarky, I did, one of my favorite videos was called, Why Did People Get Sick? And I did a few different videos about that. And one of the videos was looking at the 4 humors, as they were called. Not that it's humorous, and don't humor me, but it was things you had the phlegmatic and the sanguine, and it was a way of looking holistically as to why people get sick. It was looking at their environment, it was looking at the weather, it was looking at what they wore, what they ate, what their outlook was, what their family life was, what kind of stress they had, what kind of job they had. And I'm like, you know what? That kind of makes sense to me, that it's not just isolated, that you caught something from someone. Probably not you all here, but I was, you might want to go back and watch that video. I might have to replay it as a bonus. I was stunned at some of the comments that I got from people that were, well, I don't even really know how to describe it. Like somehow it was like anti-Christian or something to consider that we have a holistic aspect to our lives, like body, mind, spirit, soul, emotions, intellect. And just because this was a theory of illness, a few hundred years ago, that I'm like, I'm just explaining history. It was amazing. Just between you and me, it's like, wow, some people get really bent out of shape when you provide information that is contrary to what they already believe. So these very, very good people at Physicians for Informed Consent, and they are physicians, so they were taught most likely and trained in a certain way of medicine and science and so forth. But I just wanted to give you that caveat, that, please take that with a grain of salt. But as far as the research and the information that you can share with others, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I've also done a video about the concept of informed consent, meaning that it actually protects the doctor in case you come back later and say, hey, this went wrong, and, blah, blah, blah. The doctor's going to say, well, you already signed this paper. And that's not what the Physicians for Informed Consent, that's not their intention. Their intention is that you should know as much as you can about these products before they're injected into your body. And that's what informed means. I would call it informed. I don't even want to say like dissent, informed dissent. That's pretty good, I guess. Informed dissent, because you want to not comply, but not complying sounds like you're doing something wrong, where you have a right to say, I don't want to participate. So just wanted to put that out there as well. It's a fantastic group. It is they're doing this because they believe in helping people not get these jabs. So let's do this. The next thing that I wanted to do, and I'm going to take a look at your comments as well, is I wanted to share a card, which I've shared before, but this one, actually, I don't know if I shared it before, because I just got this card. So it says, Dear Peggy, thanks for your kindness and your thoughtfulness. I hope you know how very much you're appreciated and what a difference you make. And I do appreciate that. And this comes from Chelsea. She says, Peggy, your work and your videos have taught me so much. Not only that, but more importantly, you empowered me to stand up against the cootie potion when the mandates, right? That's what they were calling them. We know that that's not something that's required. Those were really illegal requirements. When they came through, I regularly studied along with your videos, and subsequently I studied Title VII, and I kept my job. Let's give her a round of applause. It is not easy to stand up to the tyrants, especially when your paycheck is on the line, when your health is on the line, when your life is on the line. And even if you keep your job, many people told me they were kind of ostracized and snubbed, and they got demoted, and there was kind of an odor in the air that they didn't belong. So it is not an easy thing to do. I hear from healthy Americans still to this day that are embroiled in lawsuits and EEOC investigations against their employers, because what they're trying to do is bleed you dry in terms of your perseverance. And that's why I love to come on this channel, is to encourage each other. That's why I share these things that you've sent me. I don't want to keep them all to myself. I want to share them so that you all can experience that encouragement and support, because heaven knows there are so many people out there that have a different perspective, and God bless them. You know what, if they want to put the thing on and take the thing and whatever, I just hope that they'll look at that Physicians for Informed Consent and learn more about what they're doing, because they were just hoodwinked by the mainstream media and the mainstream medical merry-go-round. She said, I kept my job. I'm in healthcare. And I have a pharmacist. She has her degree there. I'm not quite sure. Apparently she's a pharmacist. It was so bizarre to me that all of my intelligent colleagues went along hook, line, and sinker. I still feel like an outcast, but at least I have my pride. I have my blood purity, and I have strength to trust God. I have my principles, and I have my knowledge. Your leadership and unwavering confidence in your and our right of body autonomy inspires me to make my own freedom waves. Oh, I love how she put that. Sincerely and with gratitude, your friend and healthy American Chelsea. May God's protection and blessings cover you in Jesus' mighty name. Friends, this is what keeps me going. And all of you here in the chat and also watching the video as a replay. You know, people ask me, Peggy, why are you still doing this? They're not really pushing the jabs as much anymore. And, you know, why are you still doing this? This is why I'm still doing it. And this is why I'm still doing it. And, oh, kitty cat. And the Senator Josh, another Josh, is why I'm doing it, because he's steering people in the wrong direction. Right when they thought people were going to stop thinking about the cooties and all of that, now they go back to the measles. Think back, I think it was 2016 or maybe even earlier, right around that time. Actually, it was probably 2017, 18, 19 in California. They were pushing the measles outbreaks again. They shut down Disneyland or threatened to, and it served to make people fearful. So here's what you're going to be seeing. You're going to be seeing more about self-isolating and how good that is. Like, you should stay home if you're sick. And you know what? Stay home if you're sick, if you want to. There's nothing proven that you can make another person sick. In fact, there's even a law in the state of California, of all places. There's a law that says, in order to prove that you made someone sick, number one, you have to know that you're sick. Number two, you have to intentionally seek to infect that person. I think this came out in the AIDS. Yeah, another phony. It was a name like COVID that was given to a laundry list of symptoms, a bucket full of symptoms, and they just kept calling it AIDS. Did people die and they were told they died of AIDS? Absolutely. You may even know someone who was told that. You may even be told you have that yourself. It's another name that's given to other symptoms, just like cooties is another name given to the symptoms that we used to call the flu. So back then, and I kind of lost my train of thought. Somebody let me know in a comment what I was talking about. But what they were doing was trying to do the fear mongering so that people were going to be afraid of getting these things and then self-isolating. I was telling you about the law in California. Thank you very much. So in that very anxious time for a lot of people, they were very afraid about going to the dentist or going to the doctor, whatever they were going to get. This law came on the books in California. You had to know that you had this disease. You had to intentionally seek to infect someone, and it had to be proven that if they got the disease, that it came from you. It can never be proven. How can that be proven? All right. We're told in South Carolina that a fully vaccinated teacher, got the measles from a child that wasn't vaccinated. They didn't say that the child had measles. It's another one of those, you're sick, but you don't have symptoms. That's called hypochondria. If you go to the doctor and you say, I'd like to have a chest x-ray, the doctor will say, why? Are you coughing, spitting up blood? No, I would just like to have a chest x-ray because I might have tuberculosis. The doctor's going to go, well, okay, if you really want one. And then you come back 3 days later, I'd like to have another chest x-ray, but you just had one. I know, but I could have gotten sick between then and now. That's what they did with COVID. That's exactly what they did. They wanted you to be tested frequently for a disease so deadly you didn't even know you had it. And of course, you had to stay 6 feet away from someone. You couldn't breathe on them. But in order to be tested, They had to dig around up in your nasal cavity to destroy your membrane and your memory and your ability to smell things and your regulating your emotions. That's all up there. Why couldn't you just breathe on the swab, I ask? Yeah, I've talked about that a lot. So it's not possible to determine that somebody got sick from someone else. You don't know where that person was. You don't know, again, looking at the humors, the 4 humors, there's so much that goes on in that. Your outlook, your own body constitution. Do you have these proclivities toward illness? Do you tell yourself, well, I always get a winter flu? Well, then you're probably going to get one. So there's a lot that goes into that. All right. I think I covered everything I wanted to on this broadcast except for your comments. So let's take a look here. And we've got the news said this is the worst outbreak ever. Oh, did I mention? I think I did. The teacher was vaccinated. So that shows you how good those vaccines work. Oh, the other thing they say is, well, even if you get sick, it will be a milder version. Oh, exactly how do they know that? Are they mind readers? Are they can look into the future? They know that if someone got a flu vaccine, but they got the flu anyway, that it would have been a lot worse if they hadn't been vaccinated. I'd like to know, scientifically speaking, how that's proven. Yeah, because it can't be. All right. We've got Mizzle had the mumps 10 years old and chickenpox at 16 years old. That sounds like a little older than most. I think that's probably, I don't know, 8, 7. I don't really remember. Brenda had them all too, chickenpox, measles, and mumps. So friends that had those, did you get vaccinated? I'm curious. Wanda had measles and chickenpox. So what we're being told now with HHS is that they're going to separate out, my understanding, the measles from the MMR, because that's the other thing. If you did get vaccinated, they were separate vaccines, and now they lumped them all together. DP never got the mumps, but the chicken pox came back to haunt me via shingles. Very interesting. Valerie says, whatever it was, I had it. Yeah, I'm with you. And you know what? We survived. Yeah, Rhonda said, I think they started talking about measles in 2019. Okay. My neighbor was telling me she's going to talk to her doctor about getting the shingles jab. You know, you can't drive by a Walgreens without it saying, come on in and get all your jabs. And then what's weird is people like to get things for free. And so it's free. So they just like go do it. Years ago, I was speaking at a health event in the city of San Clemente. They put on this health fair, and there were different booths with people offering different things. And next to me was the flu vaccine booth. And you would not believe, well, you probably would, the number of people lining up, waiting in line, rolling up their sleeve to get the jab because it was free. And I was kind of speechless. I'm trying, when people would come up to my booth, I would sort of talk about it, but I wish I could have just in line said to everybody, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I've found my voice in the years since, as you know, I can't stop talking about it. Yeah. So Molly says we have an exemption for vaccines, but I had to sign a paper saying if there were cases in our county, my kids would have to stay home. I would really fight against that. I just, that is so discriminatory. Why should your children be discriminated against? Those that are afraid of getting sick, they're the ones that should stay home. Ted says, I'm the only one in my family of 15 who never got the jab. It makes me sad to know that I have no idea what could happen at any time with my parents or siblings. I can't imagine that. He said he knew it was an evil shot at 14 years old. I guess you're saying that's just amazing. I'm so sorry to hear about that. Ted says 5G also, he said, makes me extremely tired and fatigued. Yeah, they're really going after it with that as well. They're pushing, Olivia says, they're pushing this measles narrative so hard, and many people are worried about it because the news tells them to be worried about it. And Olivia is the one who brought this story to my attention. So thank you, Olivia. I've got a whole Substack and video coming on that on Wednesday. And it actually is a really good one because I kind of peeled back a few layers on this Josh Kimbrell, and they target the conservative states. They target the freedom states, just like the Bang Bang events. Those happen in places like Utah and Texas. I'm surprised we haven't had it. Well, yeah, they did them in Florida, all of those truly authentic events in Parkland and others. You got to dig into that more, friends, because it just doesn't pass the sniff test. And I've got my video, How to Spot a PSYOP. I probably will replay a few of those because some people have not seen them, how and why I expose the PSYOPs. It's so important. And they're doing it in places where there's freedom. So they're doing it for the Bang Bang events in Florida, in Texas, in Arizona, in Utah, as we saw with the Kirk event. And now they're rolling out these measles narratives in places where they want to just squash our freedom. There's no way around it. And this Josh Kimbrell says, now, it reminds me of some of the employers. Now, I fully respect your right to your religious belief. Do I think it's a religious belief to not get vaccinated? Oh, no. I think he went on to say, I don't even think, the Bible says that. And how many people have said, Jesus didn't say that. Well, they didn't have vaccines back in his time, but the Bible did say that you should only go to the doctor if you're sick. And the Bible said, don't fear their faces. And the Bible said, everything that breathes, that has breath, praises the Lord. So I worship God by breathing and by keeping my body pure. And I don't care what Josh Kimbrell thinks. And it doesn't matter what he thinks. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter what the Pope thinks. It doesn't matter what your church believes. You don't even have to go to church. You don't even have to be a person of faith to be exempt from these things that you are ethically and morally opposed to. I'll go into more detail for you on that on Wednesday, but that type of, it's like he's giving this little premise and this little sermon first. Oh, I'm a Christian. I try to live according to God's laws. Well, then why did you siphon off the $2 million for your political campaign and be sued for it and have to give up your share in your business? Just asking. And then he'll preface it with that and then say, but there's a time where your rights have to be balanced against the common good. No, your good is what matters. Your own individual rights and freedoms. That's what matters. And it kind of cracks me up when people will do that. Sometimes they'll leave a comment on my channel. Peggy, I loved the stuff you did about COVID. You really helped me, but you've really gone off base here with the tariffs. You really don't know what you're talking about. I know you have a master's degree in international policy, law, and economics, but you really don't know what you should stay in your lane. But you were great on COVID. I get that anytime I talk about the PSYOPs and the ice and the Greenland and any of that stuff. It's pretty funny. That I think they call that the backhanded compliment. All right. What else have we got here? Oh my gosh, Rhonda says, I know people that got the first and second jab and they're just now experiencing the damage. That is so sad. So the good news is that they are reducing the vaccine schedule, but it's a little too late, and not enough. I'm going to give very polite applause that it's moving in the right direction, but I can't help feel that it's a bait and switch, just like Josh Kimbrell says. The government really pushed too far with the COVID jabs, but we all know that. And it was mRNA, and that's unpredictable. But when it comes to the childhood jabs, you can't go to the other extreme. Those are fine. It sounds like a talking point to me. I'd like to know who's paying Josh. Okay. So I want to, like Deborah says, don't take nothing. I'm with you. Don't take nothing. All right. Yeah. So I did not get that jab where it leaves a scar on your arm. I think that's the polio. I did not get that. And you know what? If you got it, you were a child. You couldn't, it was not up to you to refuse, and you didn't know. And maybe way back then, at least at my age, people didn't really know that much about it. So the good news is, if you're still kicking and you're still standing strong and the body can heal, and for heaven's sakes, don't keep going down that road. Missy said, Miss Info Highway says, gotta wonder why all the kids get sick when they go back to school. Is it because everyone is jabbed just before they return? That is a very intriguing insight. And I tend to agree with you on that. Friends, I'm so happy to have you here on the live chat and on the live stream. Loyalty Angie says they had that Brady Bunch episode on purpose. No quinky dinks. I have that. I'll have to replay that one. I did that Brady Bunch episode. I highlighted that. Probably get a strike if I replay that. Okay. All right. I think I'll wrap up here, friends. So many great comments. And I often will take a few of your comments and I'll put them in the Substack, which is peggyhall.substack.com. And oh, I didn't know this. Club said, did you know that the MMR vaccine is in the tetanus shot? So that's something that people have asked me about as well. Like, should I get a tetanus shot? I cut my foot on a nail or a rusty can or something. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to give advice, but I personally don't do any of that. And you know that I've talked about our pets as well. And I'll just leave you with one scenario. And many people are still writing to me asking for help. And I have got those videos on the website, on YouTube already, and also over at peggyhall.substack.com. Here's the scenario I want to leave you with. A true story that I've talked about. A woman took her dog to be treated by the vet. And it was an urgent situation. I don't know if it was an emergency, but it was definitely urgent. And the vet said, I can only treat your animal. He doesn't have the rabies shot, and I can't treat him unless he has the rabies shot. And this healthy American was so savvy. And she said, how long does it take for the rabies shot to take effect? You know, if we're just playing along with their scenario here, because there is no rabies. That's another name that's given to a collection of symptoms that are consistent with poisoning, dehydration, starvation, some kind of infection, encephalitis, maybe a bite by another animal that's infected. But the virus called rabies has never been isolated, and it was the COVID of its day. And it's so very difficult for me to talk about because of the way animals were treated and the horrible things that were done to them in the name of science by Louis Pasteur, who basically was a liar, cheat, thief, fraud, fake, and phony, the Fauci of his day in France. And they had rabies clinics like they had COVID clinics and all of that. So it just all kind of recycles. But getting back to the story, so let's just play along with their scenario. And she's like, well, okay, if I get my dog this rabies shot, how long before it takes effect? And the doctor said, well, about 10 days to 2 weeks. The person said, so you're telling me that you're not going to treat my animal with an urgent condition now, unless he's vaccinated, even though the protective qualities of this shot don't kick in for at least 10 days to 2 weeks. So you want to be armed with this knowledge. You want to go to a vet that is not going to push these things. And on my Substack, we have a list, a growing list of veterinarians in different states. And I do not publish that. I'm not going to talk about it, on YouTube or anything, because I don't want these vets to be called out. But you can look at that kind of discreetly. And if you know of any, please email us, support@thehealthyamerican.org, and we will add more to that list. You can have a waiver. You can agree to keep your animal away from other animals. You could have the vet come to your home so that your animal's not going to be at risk of biting someone at the vet. You could have a muzzle. I don't recommend that. I'm just telling you all of the other options. Some people actually, how do I put this delicately without seeming to promote it? They, how do I put it? Create a certificate. Oh yeah, they find a certificate. It turns out they already had a certificate for rabies. I think that's how you spell it. So there's all kinds of ways of doing it, but you can also get a waiver if your animal cannot tolerate that shot. And that's the most up and up way to do it. And there are vets that will agree to do that. So that really troubles me because the animals are innocent, and there are plenty of people that don't get the shots themselves, but they still do it for their animal because they're afraid of the animal control. There's so many ways of keeping your pet safe without doing that. All right. Signing off now, friends. I appreciate you all. Love my Healthy American community. A reminder, I'm broadcasting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Monday and Wednesdays here at 5 p.m. And then Fridays at my second channel, Living Swell with Peggy Hall. We leave the headlines behind. We sail into the weekend without worrying about all the troubles and trials and tribulations of the tyrants that are trying to take us under. And we talk about you and how to live fully and freely. It's some of my favorite content. So I hope that you'll join me there 5 p.m. All right. Look forward to seeing everybody. Thanks for being on board, everybody. We had Olivia and Rhonda and Valerie and everyone else. Thanks so much. Love my Healthy American community. And I look forward to seeing you